What's your the third one?
Consultant.
Geek consultant.
Right. Grant writer, interim executive director.
Got it. Okay, 3 tags. Let's go. She said as she took a bite.
Nonprofit QuickBooks account.
Nice. Okay.
Sexual assault evaluation, culturally specific.
That is going to be tough on the storytelling, huh?
Yeah.
It
You have to
is.
be very careful. With those
3 tags.
Tags, okay, that's the directions. So I am a nonprofit digital literacy program director.
Okay.
Took a little minute to load. Let's see here.
Oh, nice.
He's my special guest, he's one of our clients.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, this is going to be interactive. Is that okay if it's interactive?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
I prefer to do interactive sessions where we have a discussion. I know I've got slides, but if you have something you want to dive deep into, the slides don't matter. And you can have access to the slides later. You know, let's not be driven by the slides. Let's actually have a dynamic conversation. But the slides do have some of the points that you may be asking, so we can go through them.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick intro. We are live, so I'll share that on social. And these are recorded thanks to Capital Factory, so you'll be
Thank you,
able to
Capital
access it.
Factory.
Yay! And great techie that we always have.
I
It's
know,
so
Airplay,
good.
love it.
Like does it, so. And Trino Coffee always gives us gourmet coffee beans for our guest speakers. So this is from Stacy and her family to you, and thanks for speaking today.
Thanks, Stacy, because I started my very first podcast called The Morning Brewcast. It was all about coffee.
Yay.
Well done. Well done. This will definitely
Yes.
get enjoyed, and
Actually-
we will talk about it on the show.
Yes. And so Jennifer came up from San Antonio, and we met during the economic downturn. I moved from Corpus Christi, San Antonio to kind of wait it out because there was really no big fundraising projects to do then. Everybody was just in shock, really. So, so I took the time to learn social media. I thought, well, it's a new thing. I started my blog there, my Instagram page, Facebook pages, and I learned how to kind of interface those with my nonprofit fundraising work. Anyway, having that concerted amount of time and Jennifer's guidance to do it, we had a blast and I learned a lot, so I lost my fear. But anyway, she's done a lot, and her bio is on the NTEN profile page, our event page, so you can read more about that. And she's been podcasting a long time. Somehow I didn't realize how long it had
2005.
been. That's like great. So she really knows her stuff. We do have one radio person right here who's done that, so ask good questions, Susanna. I wanted to thank NTEN and NetSquared, which is a division of TechSoup, for being our club sponsors. And also I wanted to say there's some swag. There are little notebooks and some summer sunglasses if you would like them. So please do that. Thanks to Dale Thompson, who's always so good about getting us snacks and refreshments. Also, I was asked by TechSoup to let you know Austin wasn't affected by Hurricane Harvey specifically. Not too badly anyway in terms of inclement weather, not major destruction like down on the coastal bend, but they got a grant, and I'm working with them to develop a curriculum. Hi, welcome, food back there. I'm working with them to develop a curriculum on nonprofit digital resiliency, and we'll be teaching it online and down in the Hurricane Harvey impacted areas this fall.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to let you know, but also to say, please, if you know anybody in nonprofits and libraries in those areas, please encourage them to sign up. There's a sign-up form, and I put that on our Facebook group page. I'll probably send it an email or something like that. So I
And is it
promise
sort
to.
of the Houston area? Or?
Houston and Coastal Bend, Corpus Christi,
Okay.
Port Aransas, Rockport, Ingleside, all those coastal communities, Victoria, all from Houston southward, really had some major challenges. And so we're developing case studies, what went well, what didn't, what technologies are available. And as you know, TechSoup provides a lot of deep discounts into technologies from the companies that they work with, and software and expertise. They have a great YouTube channel where they do extensive discussions on key topics, like the M&R report online donation reports and what's going on at any given time. So check that out as well. And last but not...
When is that deadline? I'm sorry.
Oh, you can pretty much sign up anytime. You do have to, there's a dedicated page, and you can find that on our Facebook page. And it's, you do have to set up a profile. It's all free. So you have to set up a profile like my name and my photo, so they know who you are. And then they'll loop you into the series of discussions and resources, and it's really a well thought out. We actually have a professional curriculum instructor, and I did a lot of work down in the coastal bend, and so that's why and because of the tech club, kind of got involved that way. So please send them our way, or let me know, or send us a message on Facebook or on the NTEN page. And last but not least, we appreciate Capital Factory letting us meet here. Thank you. Thanks for live broadcasting and recording. We do take these recordings once they're on YouTube Live and complete, and we post them back on our NTEN profile page on the event listing, so you can return and watch it again. So
I talk really fast, and you can actually slow it down so that you can actually hear it beyond chipmunk speed, so that's
and you
very
can
helpful.
go back and back and back and like, what? And I'm sure Jennifer also would be happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Oh, yeah.
And if you, well, she and I are in touch all the time, so if you send the question to me, I'll pass it along or give you her email. So without further ado.
All right,
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Really appreciate being invited to come and share podcasting with you. As she said, my name is Jennifer Navarrete. I got into podcasting because in 2005, I heard about this thing called podcasting. I was like, what is that? So like any good person, any good techie, I go and search, and I was like, you mean I can record something, put it up on the web, and no one can stop me? And I was, sign me up. And my sister, I was telling my sister about it, and she said, well, I'll do that thing with you, but I don't want it to be hard. And we were drinking coffee and talking and discussing what kind of topics would we want to podcast about it. And all of a sudden I realized, and what we normally do as we sit down together and drink coffee. And so I said, hey, let's just do this. And she was like, well, what's this? I go, this right here. We're drinking coffee and we're talking. She's like, okay. And we did it, and we called the Morning Brewcast, and we started getting emails from people in Brazil and Malaysia telling us that we really understood coffee and that they loved our show. And the fact was we were just two crazy gals from Texas who drank coffee and talked faster the more coffee that we drank. And so we talked about coffee, and we would go to coffee shops, and we would do coffee reviews, and we would go to specialty roasters and drink $300 a pound coffee, and it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it. But through that process, I was kind of a lonely person doing, being the podcaster in San Antonio and not knowing if there were other podcasters in San Antonio. And I knew there were folks online because we were connected online, and so I started a group called the San Antonio Podcasters. And that was where I found those first 5 podcasters that lived in San Antonio. And from there, we created, user-generated conferences called camps, right, which we all know here in Austin. Pod camp, and did bar camp, and startup grind, and all these different events, and really helped cultivate that community in San Antonio so that it wasn't just everyone in silos, but we were all connected. And this was as social was developing. I've done a lot in far as social and video and live events, but podcasting is still my all-time favorite. I consume podcasting daily. I'm subscribed to all kinds of shows. I've done podcasts that have that were only for a certain amount of time. I've done podcasts that lasted for years and then dried up. I do different kinds of things all the time, but no matter what, I just love podcasting. So I'm hoping by the time I'm done talking to you, you will also have an idea of where podcasting can help your nonprofit or help the mission or cause that you're going with. So I think of podcasting as having 4 levels, and so as we go into this, we're going to dive into it. Hopefully you'll identify one of those levels as a level that you can start with, or perhaps one that you want to get to. And I brought a few toys for us to play around with. But let's dive in. So, story time, right? Grassroots versus mainstream. When I talked about that history of what was going on, it was just a bunch of us geeks doing this thing. It wasn't corporate America doing it. It wasn't anything like that. But it was just all of us going, this thing's cool. Let's go do this thing. Podcasting, social media. But now we look at now it's big businesses doing it, right? Everyone is doing podcasting and social media. It isn't just the geeks anymore. And so you may think, well, Jennifer, how can I stand out? Because everyone's doing these things. Well, it all comes down to storytelling, right? And who's listening to podcasts? Well, people of all ages. And the stat I'm about to share with you really comes from Pew, but it's off of a journalism.org. And I'm always going to give attribution, right? Because when it comes to social, it's all about, attribution, authenticity, and transparency. So anything that you see here, you're going to see where it comes from. And if it's not on there, ask me, I'll share it with you. But the reality is it's young and old alike. It's not just the geeky folks. It's kids are listening to kid podcasts. As a matter of fact, there's a huge deficit of kid podcasts because there's kids who want to listen to podcasts. There's only so many shows out there. So if you're thinking about doing one for kids, you're going to be very successful because there's a demand for that. And older Americans and kids alike. So everyone's listening, but if you want to really look at who's listening, this is from Pew and Edison, the number of stats. So I started in 2005. Podcasting actually started in 2004, but they weren't tracking that back then. They didn't start tracking it till 2006. And as we come between 2006 and 2019, for a while there, it was kind of dragging. There wasn't a lot of listeners, but recently we're getting a huge influx, and hopefully that's why you're here, because you're recognizing the value. I think there's close to 800,000 podcasts out there, and they say only about maybe 23 or 28% update frequently, like once a week, and why is that? Why doesn't everybody update all the time? Sometimes people launch a podcast around something small, like maybe not something small, like a book. And so if the book has 25 chapters, they launch a podcast series that is 25 episodes. And it's never meant to be anything more than that. It's always just going to live around that one product, or maybe it's around an event. So I don't want you to, when you hear stats like that, sometimes it's like, oh, does that mean that they're not successful? It means that different people are using it for different purposes. So don't feel like you have to use it the way everyone else is using it. Use it the way it's going to fit you. You may want to just do a series, and you may just want to do something unique. And then that's going to be it. And is that okay? Yes, it's absolutely okay. So as I share with you, just don't feel like you have to do what everyone else is doing. Don't feel like you have to keep up with the podcasting Joneses. Make it work for you. So big business is paying attention to podcasting, right? No doubt, lots of money being thrown at it. I know that sometimes there's grants that are being written specifically for podcasting. If you can tell your grantor that you're wanting to use their grant money for podcasting, they're more likely to invest in it nowadays because it's becoming more popular and more mainstream. So you may think, well, what is it going to take to do a podcast? How much money is that going to take? Am I going to have to buy all these kinds of fancy equipment, and how can I get it done? You might be surprised that there might be a grant out there for you, or someone where you can fit this into a grant, so you don't have to feel like it's got to come out of pocket. Of course, it could be if you have techie, geeky folks on your staff, more than likely they probably have some of this stuff, and you may be able to just start with what you have. So who's this for? Well, it's really for anyone who's going to be growing, who wants to grow and share their message. I put the clock here. I use this one because a lot of times we think, oh, I don't have time for that, or I'm too busy. But yet in reality, your nonprofit, the legs of your nonprofit is long term. So podcasting is this long tail proposition. It's not like you can do one episode and go, where's the big checks, or where's the sponsors, or the volunteers, or the mentors? It's not going to work that way. You need to come up with something that's going to go long term. So you have time. How much time do you need to share your message? How long do you want your podcast to go? There's all kinds of ways that you can go with that. So I kind of think about the 4 levels of podcasting. I also think there's 4 different ways or 3 different ways of doing, well, there's actually 4 now that I think about it. Micro podcasting, 1 to 3 minutes. How much can you tell in 1 to 3 minutes? You're going to have to be really factual, right? It's going to have to be more, I see more tech and more education podcasts that are those little tiny, and these are called micro podcasts, so 1 to 3 minutes, and maybe you do them daily, and it's just the little dink, 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 dink that you're getting out, and maybe you have a theme of the month is, come up with a theme, somebody. Finance for nonprofits,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Finance for nonprofits, and so
Yes.
we're in August. I mean, we're in July. What should nonprofits be thinking about when it comes to finance?
Quarter end.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at quarter end, then you're looking at here for the whole month. We're going to do 30, or maybe you're going to do 25 because you're not going to do the weekends episodes, and it's going to be Monday through Friday, and each one is going to build on the other and build on the other. It's just little nuggets, little nuggets, little nuggets. So could you do a micro podcast? Yeah. Is it going to take a lot of time? You may have to script it all, right? And you can't just go off, chase a rabbit trail if you do it like you do a 30-minute show and you can just go off. No, it's going to be more scripted, and it's going to be something you can get out there. But you could do it all in one sitting. You could do your whole 25 episodes all at once if you wanted to, and then just release them as you go. So that's one thing, micro podcasting. Then there's nugget podcasting. 5 to 10 minutes, no more than 15, but I usually think of Has anybody ever heard of Nutrition Diva?
Yes.
Okay, so Nutrition Diva does what, 9 to 11 minute episodes on average, and she fits in like at least 1 to 2 sponsors in there. And she's giving you tons of information. I'm amazed at how she does it. But I'll listen to her, I'll learn a lot about nutrition and health, but I'll also have heard from like 1 to 2 sponsors that she read. It was a host-read sponsorship. So how cool is that, right? How much information can you give out there? A lot more. And then there's the commuter podcast, 20 to 30 minutes, average commute. Now, it depends on what city you live in. If you live in Houston, you may listen to 2 episodes at once. But on average, right, about 20 to 30 minutes for the average commute for most folks. So that's the commuter style. Can you go chase a rabbit trail on a show like that? Yeah, you can, because you may have a co-host and someone will say something that will spark a little bit of conversation. Should those be topics scripted? Probably. When we did Morning Brewcast, we just did like bullet points and maybe some links. And maybe we had like on our phone or on the computer, the website pulled up if it was something news about coffee. We kept it really loose because we really wanted it to be more engaging and conversational and not so scripted. And so that allowed for us to just kind of chase things. We would do interviews and it would allow us to kind of chase things. We would have a flow, but at the same time we were really loose with it. And so that worked really well for us. Now long form, and I like to think of those as being 45 minutes plus. And I don't know about you, but I actually listen to shows that are like 2 to 3 hours long. Now I don't listen to them all in one setting, but I break them up. Sometimes, very rarely, but occasionally I do. But mostly I break them up. But that person they've got a whole, theme and series that they do, and they have rabid fans who love that kind of stuff. That, I'm gonna tell you, you probably wanna get comfortable doing live. The reason being, because the time that it takes to record, think about how much time it's gonna take you to do the post-production for that, if it's you. And who is that, right? So who's the team? Who's gonna be doing it? Is it a team of 1? I'm gonna be the host, I'm gonna be the script writer, I'm gonna be the interviewer, I'm gonna be the person who's doing the recording, I'm gonna do the post-production editing, I'm gonna create the show notes at the end, I'm gonna throw it up on the blog, the nonprofit blog, and put it out there. Is it a team of 1? In which case, let's be realistic. Can you do a show every day if you're doing recording and recording and post-production? Probably not. So live is something to consider. Now when I say live, you wouldn't get nervous because you've been in radio. But the average, I was nervous at the very beginning. We did everything recorded in post-production. I got really tired of those 3 a.m. editing sessions. And I thought, I gotta get good at this live thing because I'm not gonna live in podcasting if I'm doing 3 a.m. for too much longer. And I got comfortable with live. And now I'm comfortable with me saying and ah and having stutters because I feel like that's part of the show. And it's being human. You don't have to be perfect, you can be human. Now, does that mean that you should have terrible audio? No, you should have good audio. But it's okay to be human. So get comfortable with live if you're gonna go long form, and there's a lot of different ways that you can go into that. But so those are just some of the things I want you to consider. What type of show, what's the length of the show that you think, just at this first blush, that you could start with? Is it a micro, is it a nugget, is it commuter, is it long form? And then who's the team that's gonna support that? And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but finding out who it's for also, you think about your audience, right? Are they someone who would listen, in the drive? Are they someone who would really just the facts? Like probably in accounting, people just want the facts. I don't know if they want you to go off on a rabbit trail on accounting. I don't think so. But maybe on a more human interest one, maybe for yours, going off on a rabbit trail where you talk about, you have the compelling stories, without giving anything away, but you can give case studies where there's compelling stories where there's this transformation, these things happen, and then that is like, oh, I want a longer show for that. So you have to decide what that's going to be for your audience as well. And then, so where do you start? And a lot of times when you think about podcasting, and I brought a little gear, and usually, that's like, oh God, what microphone, what software, who's gonna do it? I've got to learn editing, what's gonna happen? So I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I'm really trying to simplify. Can podcasting get complicated? Yeah, it can. Because if you're the team of 1 and you're doing all of it, then you're gonna have a 3 a.m. editing session where you've got the headphones on and everyone in the house is asleep and you're working. And then you're at 3 a.m. you're like, it's done! And you just woke up, the baby, or you just woke up the dog or something, So there is that. That can happen, but more so back then than nowadays because there's a lot of cool tools now where we don't have to go there. So where do you start? How do you do it? And what tools will you need? Well, the old way of sharing messaging is for it to be a broadcast, right? And that comes, no offense to the radio and the TV folks, but you think about broadcast, it's this megaphone thing where I'm talking at you, but not with you. Whereas podcasting, even though you can do that, if you go live, you can actually have audience interaction. You can have show interaction, kind of the traditional old stream radio kind of gives you a little bit of that. But I want to think of it at, oh, did I just get lost? Yes. Is it more of the same? You're like, oh, Jennifer, we're not going to do broadcasting, we're going to do podcasting, and so we're not going to, but it could become something like that where you're not engaging with your audience. So just always want to kind of throw that out there, that think in mind that you have an audience that's listening to you very, very closely. And how do they listen to you? Well, it's like whispering in the ears of your audience. On the way up here, on the drive, the radio is off, but you know what's in my ears? Earbuds. Now, these are earbuds, by the way, that allow me to hear traffic, because I bought special earbuds for that reason, for driving, because it's meant for that purpose, where you can hear very clearly what's going on, but you're also very able to hear this. I listen to 2 podcasts on the way up here. I don't listen to the radio. I'm listening to that. And those hosts, I feel like I know them. I don't actually know them, but I certainly feel like I know them. And I can tell you back in 2006, at my very first podcast conference, I was in the podcast, in the hotel of the conference, and somebody was talking behind me, and I was like, oh, I know who that is. I didn't know who that was. I'd never seen them, but I knew their voice. And I turned around and I followed my ears to that person. I said that person's name, and then I went up to them and I gave them a hug, and they were like, had no idea who I was. But I felt like I was so close to them because they were whispering in my ear for months. And so it's a really great way to have an intimate connection with your listeners, and there's nothing like it. Could I have driven and watched YouTube videos? Well, I shouldn't. I didn't. But can I read a blog post while I'm driving? What can I do? I can listen. When I'm walking the dog, when I'm exercising, when I'm doing things where I'm otherwise engaged, I can listen to a podcast, or in radio too, right? You can do that. But it's difficult to do those things, the other platforms. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't be doing everything. I will say that, actually, I'll ask a question. When you were kids and you were in elementary school, what was your preferred style of learning? Did you like to do hands-on work in elementary? Mm-hmm. Were you someone who preferred to listen? Because when I was in elementary, we had listening, like they would put the little album and we would listen to a lesson. I don't know, they don't do that anymore, but that was way back in the day. But then there was also people who just like the bookwork. I want the words and I want to do that. Well, we're grown up, but the way that we learn and the way that we consume content, the way we prefer to learn new things, doesn't actually change. So if you're only writing a blog, you're reaching a market, but you're missing out on the video and the audio people. If you're only doing a podcast and you don't also, really spend time developing other platforms, so think about this as reaching some of that audience who you're not reaching because you're not creating content for them. So think about that. Okay, so because it's intimate and it's close, I've already shared, and there was another story like that where Father Roderick is a Catholic priest in the Netherlands, and I had been listening to his show, and I was at that event, and through the double doors comes in this priest, and I recognized him from he was far, and I was like, oh, Father Roderick! And so I ran over there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been listening to your show for months, I'm such a fan, and I gave him a hug, and of course he doesn't know who I am. And at that second time that happened, I thought, I think I need to stop just running up to people and hugging them, because even though I feel like I know them, I'm some strange woman, coming up and telling them how much I love their show. So when I tell these stories, I'm not just telling it to you I've been a podcaster since 2005. I'm also sharing with you as a listener, as someone who's a consumer of content, how I feel about those podcasters. And so I know it from both perspectives, so it can be very, very powerful. So what? You may say, what, Jennifer? I don't know. I don't know if I could do that, or I never thought I could do that, and I'm here to tell you that you can. And I'm going to tell you that she doesn't run a nonprofit, but Patty Porter told me I can never do what you do. I was doing some consulting. She was for her. And I said, you really need to start a podcast, because I would sit there during our sessions and she had amazing stories. She does crisis communication. She does it for government, she does it for nonprofits, she does it for business. And she would tell me these stories, not telling names, but just situations. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You really need to do a podcast. She was like, no, I could never do what you do, Jennifer. I actually I had to make her do it. I forced her. I said, please, if you do one 15-minute show and you hate it, I'll back off. I won't press you on it anymore. She did one 15-minute show. She podcasted for 8 years. She loved it. She got a lot of recognition. It was really good for her business. You can, she's recently stopped it, but because she's transitioning into voiceover work. So that actually, because she did podcasting, it actually helped her learn a love of audio, and now she reads audiobooks and other things. And so she's like, now I'm going like, that's awesome. So anyway, and then she had a YouTube channel. So she took her podcast and turned it into a YouTube channel. And she told me that I think it was someone from Israel, had been watching her videos and contacted her and wanted to consult with her. No, it was Greece. And she had that client for 2 years. So you think, well, it's audio, does it belong on a video platform? And you're gonna hear a lot of people argue back and forth on that, but I just point to Patty and go, she got a client, a 2-year client, because she did that. So don't feel like you can't do things.
I was gonna say that video is, the statistics are that in the next couple of years that it's gonna be 80% of all communications or some outrageous number.
Yeah, I believe that.
And I recently got Roku and Sling. I thought, okay, I'm gonna try that. So I can get YouTube as part of that. So I've been signing up on, I have never subscribed to anything, but so there's a bunch of programs, educational programs on there. And there are quite a few people, I think TechSoup even has some, which are really just recorded webinars. And it's really just voice, but I've been listening to them and it's great because then I can stop and I can go do something in the kitchen, then come back and listen to them. And rather than, I'm not much of a TV watcher, but if I can have an educational program, there's one of my favorite events that's held every year is Viva Las Vegas Rockabilly Weekend, and the guy who organizes it, who's Brit actually, has his podcast with radio playing and commentary, and it's on YouTube. So I get his picture and I can play
And
that
you can hear
show
it.
for the week and hear the rockabilly. So I'm just saying that people are taking podcasts for sure, because I've been watching it since I got the Roku system. I'm like, how did I miss this? It's the best
Well, it
thing.
opens up a whole other world.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I'm with
yes.
you. I do, I mean, we
So
have
yes,
Apple
YouTube
TV.
with podcasts is
Mhm.
works. It works. It's all over the place.
So, yeah, so that's, so you may think, well, I'm not a video person, Jennifer, I don't want to be on video. Well, you don't have to be,
Yeah,
but you
your
can
pretty
be.
picture that you like,
Yeah,
that you chose,
exactly.
and other stuff.
And then she wrote a business, she wrote several books and, all these great things that she did, but she was already a great crisis communication coach. It wasn't that she wasn't that already, but this allowed her to amplify that in so many ways. And she actually taught other crisis coaches how to use these platforms and use these mediums and stuff. So you may think, oh, I'm not going to know. When you get going, people are going to come up to you. Other nonprofits and other folks are going to kind of come up to you and go, can you kind of show me how you're doing what you're doing? And that, by the way, can become a consulting gig for you, for your nonprofit or for yourself. So you may think, oh, Jennifer, I could never do that. Yes, you can, and yes, you will. So podcasting equals business. Now you may be thinking, oh, Jennifer, I went to Apple Podcasts and formerly iTunes, and I went to Google Play, and I went to Spotify, and my topic, there's like 5, 10, 15, 20 other podcasts in my topic, in my category. I listened to a few of those, and they're amazing, and I don't know if I have anything to add, and I'm going to tell you, yes, you do. Because I'm going to go back to when I was a little girl and I stayed at my grandmother's house. Every night in the evening, she watched Walter Cronkite, and then later on Dan Rather. But weren't the other, and that's CBS, right? Weren't NBC and ABC also had the nightly news? So why was it that my grandmother watched Walter Cronkite? For whatever reason, the way he read the news, or his personality, her style, that was her spice, that was her flavor. It didn't mean that the other 2 stations weren't also giving the same news, but your audience will be attracted to your spice and your flavor. Also, right now I'm into outdoor podcasts. I'm listening to all kinds of outdoor podcasts. Once I started, I listened to one, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And so then I go and find all the ones I can find, subscribe to them all, filter them down to the ones I really like, and then I go listen to their back catalog. So I burned through one podcast in about 2 months. I went through their 3 years of podcasts, because I could not get enough. I would listen to them back to back to back, back to back to back. So you think, oh, well, that was 3 years ago. It was brand new to me, and I couldn't get enough of it. But just because I listened to that one, did that mean I don't need to listen to any other outdoor podcast? No. I wanted all the other outdoor podcasts, so don't feel like, oh, that's already done, and oh, someone's doing it better. No, no. You have your own personality, your own flavor, your own style, and your audience will be attracted. And even if they are listening to those other ones, guess what? They can't wait to get a new one to listen to you, to add you to their subscriptions.
I just have a quick question. Do you follow Two Broads Talking Politics podcast?
I avoid that last word as like the plague. Like the plague.
Politics?
For my sanity.
These are two Midwestern moms. They're hilarious, and they really nail these topics. Man.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
And that's a nice thing. There's anything and everything you want,
I know,
right?
it's just like-
Whatever you want, it's out there. And if it's not out there, gosh, by darn it, you better go and make that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the levels. Oh, level 4 is not on there, but it is in the slide. So level 1, mobile, right? So we have a production studio right here. Right here. This is all you need for audio and video. You don't need to go any further. You don't need to buy fancy things. Buying fancy things helps you get better, but can you start with what you have now? Yes, yes, yes. Please start with what you have now. Level 2, mobile and computer. You're like, well, you know, I've got a laptop and I want to get a USB mic and I'm going to use some software and I'm going to go that route. And it's like, cool, all right, well, we can talk about that. Level 3 is like, you're like, I am all in, I'm building a home studio, I'm putting moving blankets or padding on my wall and I'm decking it out and I'm going to live stream the whole thing. Okay, cool, we can talk about that too. Level 4, for whatever reason, is not up there, but level 4 is a podcast production team. And we'll go a little bit deeper into that for you to consider. But I'm going to leave it there and then we're going to go in. So as I said, there's a lot of equipment out there. Typically, this is where people get lost with podcasting. I show this and people start to like eyes glaze over. Oh my God, I'm lost. You know, what the heck is all of that stuff? Do I need all of those things? Can you use any of these? Yeah, you can use any and all of them. It just depends. I actually own almost everything here. Well, not this. But I have a H6, I've got the Heil, I've got the, all these things. But I do all 4 levels of podcasting. So depending on the situation, I decide what I'm going to do. So don't get lost because, as I said, all you need is the production studio in your pocket. This is it. This is all you really need to get started. And I think people overthink it because back in the day, you did have to know all the things. It wasn't easy, but now, this was before smartphones. This was before apps. So right now is a great time to get started on podcasting because it's never been easier. So if you want to just straight out record, I use this thing called iTalk by Griffin. Matter of fact, I'm using it right now. I'm actually recording myself on my phone with this lapel mic, and it's a great little app. There's a free version, there's a paid version. The paid version allows you to send it to SoundCloud and up to Dropbox and to different, like automatically, whereas the free version, you have to download it to your computer and go that route. But the paid, I want to say it's like, I don't know, under $4. It's not expensive. And the audio quality is actually quite good. I've been really pleased with it. I've had this app for a long time, and I still use it today. Another app, Tape-A-Call Pro. Some people are like, well, how do I record somebody on the phone? The audio quality here, not great, but do you need to, if you're interviewing someone or if you want to get something transcribed, can you use this? Yeah, it totally captures it and downloads it and you're ready to roll. And it's like a 3-way call. At this time it was $15. I'm not sure how much it's selling for now, but I use this too, depending on the situation, depending on what I need. I will use this. Ringer, by far, has a warmer sound. When I first tried out Ringer, I was just blown away about how warm a phone call could sound. Because it was me on a phone and the person I was interviewing on the phone. And when I downloaded that file, I was like, holy cow, it sounds rich and warm. And I wasn't expecting that because I was so used to things like, you know, Tape-A-Call and other things out there that I was like, wow, this is actually pretty good. The heavy lifting on this is that the person on the other line also needs to download it, and you have to give them an access code or a link, and then they have to enter it. And some people are like, oh, my guest is not going to do that. So that is a little bit, and here's the other kicker. When you're done with the call, both of you need to leave the app open in order for it to complete the download, because if not, it gets cut off. And that's a shortcoming, right? Pros, cons. I still put it up here just because if you've got a couple of people who are a little bit more tech savvy, they would like this. There's things like Spreaker. If you like live, Spreaker is really great with live. You can have your music, you can have all your stuff, your intros, your outros. You can bring everybody in and go live all at once. And this is really nice. Now this is a paid one, but what are you gonna, if you're gonna go live, then you don't have to worry about anything else because it's all on your app, mobile. And then Anchor recently was acquired by Spotify, and they are very easy to create a podcast. I think their moniker is the easiest way to create a podcast, if I recall. It's not on here, it's on their website. But it's free to download, free to set up, free to do everything. They'll submit it to Spotify, obviously now because they're owned by Spotify. They'll submit it to Google, they'll submit it everywhere. Now here, you're like, okay, Jennifer, that sounds pretty good. Where's the catch? The catch is that having been in this space for a long time, I've seen companies come and companies go. This is not going to go anywhere because Spotify bought them, but I'm always hesitant to give somebody ownership of my stuff. I don't mind using the tools. I think using the tools is good. But at the end of the day, I need to own that. Back in the day, there was a company called Utters, and they were an audio service. You would call on the phone, and you could release an audio, and it would release to social. It was really cool. All of a sudden, one day it stopped working. So all of the audio that everyone had, gone. Because we didn't think to download it back then. We were just thinking it's up, and there were a lot of situations like that. So ever since those early days, I'm always someone who's like, fine, use the tools, but then download everything so that you, at the end of the day, if it goes the way of the dodo, you still have your content. The other second thing that I'll tell you is that if you have them submit to Apple Podcasts, to Google, everywhere on your behalf, the RSS feed, which is really simple syndication, which it's kind of, everyone knows what RSS feed is. Yeah? Okay, good. Then the RSS feed actually is their RSS feed. And if you left Anchor, right. Now you can contact Anchor and say you want to use your RSS feed, which would be on your blog, which would be preferable. And they will do that. Most folks don't know that. They don't do it, and then they leave, and then they're like, oh, where's all my stuff? So it's kind of that's the kind of a little bit. Now, I'm not going to tell you not to use them because they are very easy. Just be aware of that there's those little couple of sticky points. Level 2, question on level 1.
Oh, are you saying that in those cases, like with Anchor, is it that they would, if you leave, they would own the content or
the feed? So the feed is where, it's kind of like a subscription, like if we think about Time Magazine, I could either go to Barnes & Noble every single day and go see if the brand new episode of Time Magazine is there, or I could subscribe to Time Magazine, and then when it's done, it comes to me. So subscription works the same way. That's what RSS feed is for, is that when I release an episode, then the people who are subscribed to my podcast automatically get it. They don't have to come to my blog, they don't have to come and look for it, it comes to them automatically. So if we know that, have that understanding, then what we're looking at is that RSS feed, that really simple thing, what happens is that, I just lost my train of thought, is that then we're looking at that, I'm trying to think of how, I'm overcomplicating it, I don't want to overcomplicate it. Okay, so Carolyn was talking about her blog. And if she has a podcast on it, you have an RSS feed because WordPress automatically has that.
Yes.
And you can submit that anywhere. Okay, so no matter what, that blog is hers because as long as she pays I'm going to say GoDaddy, I don't know if it's GoDaddy, but whoever, as long as she does that, then she owns it, she controls it. Nothing's going to happen as long as she's owning and controlling that. Whereas in theory, if Anchor, like Utters, disappears for whatever reason, then all of those shows that were through your feed, your audience, you're going to lose your audience because that's going to disappear. So I'm kind of overcomplicating it, but there's a long kind of story behind all of that, so I'm trying not to overwhelm. But
basically you want to own your
own everything.
content.
I mean,
Download.
use the tools. Yes, use them all, but download everything and own as much as you can and control as much as you can. Because everybody complains about Facebook, including myself, but we don't own it. They own it. They make the rules. Do we have to play there? No, we don't like it, we can walk away. So, he who has the gold makes the rules. So control as much of your stuff as you can is really what I'm coming down to, only because of those experiences I've had. So I have these toys here, and these really tie into level 1, so which is why I'll share. And I don't know if the folks online can see, but I have just a simple ATR 2100. The nice thing about the ATR 2100, it's around $70-ish. Really good mic. Beefy mic. I have 2 of these that I travel with, and I tear down, set up, and I travel all over the state. The nice thing about this one is it's got both the USB, right? The XLR, right here, but it also has USB.
Oh,
So this can connect directly to your computer.
Oh.
Or you could go, you could get fancy, right? You can have this into a mixer, into an interface, into, anything that would be more professional. Now, the reason I have this here in particular, and although it's a little tangled, is that this XLR goes to what?
your phone?
So you maybe think, well, how do I know if something goes to that? So a traditional line in is tip, ring, sleeve. Anything that goes to a mobile phone, in particular an iPhone, it's going to be tip, ring, sleeve, and that's TRRS. I know I'm getting lost, but I don't want you to go home with your microphone that you have that has just a normal plug and plug it into your phone and go, why isn't this working? Because it needs to have TRRS, tip, ring, sleeve. So if you see the two rings in here, that's the ring. And that tells you that it's for your phone. So I have done interviews on a phone with this, just holding it back and forth.
If your phone has like the new USB-C, you can get the adapter? Okay.
And what's the sound quality like?
It sounds good. It's depending on the microphone, So here, what I have here, I have the other lapel mic right here. This is actually an interview set by Rode, R-O-D-E. And it has, line 1, line 2, and then I can also monitor. I can put a headphone here and listen, or have somebody listen while we do the interview. And the audio, this one's it's in the high 200s. But this is by far one of the nicest. The quality is amazing, and the fact that it just plugs right into your phone. And Rode has an app where it will separate the tracks. So sometimes somebody's coughing, and you're like, oh great, it all blended into one track, and now what am I going to do with that? Do I let it sit there? Do I edit that whole section out? Oh, but the guest said something amazing, or somebody's dog barks, or whatever. Just lost a fuzzy. And so this actually records with 2 separate tracks. So one guest is in one, and then you as the interviewer is in the other, and it's really, really good. I use this at robotics events where it's very, very loud, and it's okay because at an event like that, that there's ambient sound, but the quality of the person speaking is not distorted or lost. You can still hear what's going on behind, the robotics event, but you can very clearly hear that person without feeling like you're like, what? What did they say? They're getting lost in the background sound. This is amazing. So I'm just the biggest fan right now of this. It's my newest thing, and of course I always use the fuzzies to kind of help, but this kid didn't come with the fuzzies. I bought them extra.
Can we have your slides as your slide deck as
Yeah, no.
PDF
Yes.
or something, and then I'll upload it on my
Yep.
SlideShare or wherever if you have it on Slide.
I do have it on SlideShare, but you can do that too. It's fine.
Well, if I can, I'll just take
Yeah.
that link and put it on.
So this goes back to
Because I will never remember these,
all the tools, yes.
the names of the brands, so.
2 questions.
Yeah.
A lot of the apps that you had on there were for iPhone specific. Do you know if they have Android?
They do. Some of them are cross. They're not all. I think iTalk is not for Android. Anchor is for both, if I recall.
Okay. And then my other question is, for something like that, if you're interviewing, say, 2 people, what's the quality of, you stick it between the 2 of them? Is it powerful enough to pick up both voices?
Oh,
or is
this?
it no, the fuzzies.
Well, you're going to have it right here.
The road.
But if you're interviewing like a pair of people,
Uh-huh.
and
Oh, I see.
does that make sense?
Yeah, so what I've done in the past is that I get it, and I actually just have one of them hold it between them so that they can talk to it.
Gotcha.
It's pretty good. It really is. You'd be surprised at the quality. I was, because I buy lots of things, and then I'm like, oh, that sucks, and oh, I just wasted money. But this one, when I got it in, it actually not only met, but even in some cases, because of those loud events, actually exceeded my expectation. I was surprised at how clear it was, even though there was so much going on.
And you said it was R-O-D-E, is that right? R-O-D-E?
R-O-D-E. And I'll send you those things. But so that's all we do. You don't have to, so you're thinking, okay, but I've also done this, by the way. I have totally done this, interviews like this. It works. The audio quality on these is not bad, actually. Granted, is it ideal? No, but sometimes if you're in it, you have an opportunity for an interview and you're like, I don't have anything with me. Hey, you go with what you got. This is your production studio. Don't forget it. Don't feel bad about it. But if you do have opportunity to have some tools, It's not expensive. I mean, it really isn't. It can be very, very affordable. So this is an XLR mic to a phone, but let's say you're like, well, I want a USB, and you may say, well, I want to go with, and I think it was, where was it? Up here. You know, you want the Blue Yeti, you know, or you want to use a gamer headphone, which, you know, the audio quality's not going to be that great, but maybe that's what you've got. Start somewhere. You can always get better, and I will tell you, and you'll hear this too, your first few shows, no matter how well prepared you are, actually aren't going to be that great in comparison to your next 10 shows and your next 20 shows. But how do you get to show 20 where you really got, you know, you've dialed in your sound, you figured out what works for you, and you have this show flow that you're like, oh, this is my show. But how do you get to show 20? You got to get through the first 5. So just start and get going, and start small, start simple, and then add complexity as you go. You know, if you feel you need it, you may not need it. You may be like, this is perfect, I don't need to go any further than this. And don't feel like you have to. Again, don't feel like you have to keep up with the social media or the podcasting Joneses. It's really easy to get kind of going, well, I don't have this and they do, and it's like, stop yourself. Just do it. Okay, let's go back. Where were we? Okay, so WordPress, podcasting, right?
I noticed that there's a setup system.
There is. So I've got
WordPress,
the Blue Yeti here, and of course this was, what I was showing you here, right, is the XLR, and then you've got the USB. It just plugs directly into your computer. It's amazing. It works really well. I've been very happy with it. It's a really sturdy, durable mic, and it's got good sound. And if you go on any podcasting group in Facebook and say, I don't have a lot of money, I've got a small budget, but I want a decent mic, everybody's going to talk. There's others, but they'll definitely, this is one of the ones that pops up often, and there's a reason why. It's just tried and true, and it can take in my case, it can take a beating and just keep working just fine. And then so we're going to talk a little bit about software. So if you have a Mac, GarageBand comes with your computer, and so guess what? You're ready to roll. You know, there's a lot of tutorials out there on how to do on YouTube, on how to podcast inside of GarageBand. This is actually an older version of GarageBand that I have, but you know, it has and if you go into the new version of GarageBand, it has a legacy setting, and the legacy setting gives you all of these podcasting options here. So that's something to consider if you're going to go there. But you know, it's just the audio, the intro, the outro. You can make this, you can do editing in here. As you can see, I've got cuts up there. You can blend things, you can do ducking. I mean, it's simple, it's not complex. And you're like, well, Jennifer, I don't have a Mac, so what about me? Well, Audacity is free. It's for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And tons of tutorials out there also on how to use this for podcasting. And there are professional podcasters that use GarageBand and Audacity, both free platforms. Don't feel like you're like, I've got to go buy Adobe Audition, I've got to go buy, you know, Logic, whatever. No. Don't. This works. It's tried and true. It works. Go with what works.
Which one do you prefer?
I use them all. All of them for different reasons. I use them all because I started with GarageBand, and then I moved to Audacity, and then used Audacity and GarageBand. Then one of the guys that I was working with wanted me to use Reaper, and I thought, well, let me try it. And I really did like Reaper. So you can do it for free. It's Windows and Mac, but then after there's an evaluation period. In theory, you can evaluate it forever, but because I liked what they were doing, I paid the $60, so I've got a license to use it. Hindenburg Journalist is my new favorite. I record in Reaper right now, but I edit in Hindenburg. The thing about Audacity is it's got some really cool effects, noise removal effects, and kind of some gating that I really like. So sometimes I'll just go put a file that I recorded in Reaper, throw it into Audacity, fix it the way that I know that it'll do it, and then I put it into Hindenburg and do the final edits. Now, am I asking you to do that? No, but I'm techie geeky, and I've been around for so long that I kind of know these little things. But Hindenburg is something new to me, but it's not new. It's for broadcasters. It was actually created for reporters. And they have a whole suite of products geared towards reporters. So Hindenburg Journalist was for them to record out in the field, and they actually have one called Field Reporter, also another tool. But this was for them to go and do the edits on their interviews. So they go and they record the interviews, but then now you got to edit it. So this is the only software that I have found that is made for the spoken word. GarageBand is made for musicians. Audacity is made for musicians. Reaper is made for musicians. Doesn't mean that podcasters can't use it. We absolutely can. We do. but there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't need in those places. And I find that a lot of people who are getting started get overwhelmed by there's so many options. It's like, no, you don't need all that stuff. You need these few things to do what you need to do. And so the nice thing about Hindenburg is it's strictly for the spoken word. It's very nice. Now, this is not inexpensive. The journalist, the basic journalist is $95, and the Journalist Pro, which is the one that I moved up to after I used this for a while, is like, I want to say $300 or so. So you're like, don't start GarageBand's free, Audacity's free, Reaper's free if you want to evaluate it forever. I mean, go with start simple, but as you go on, you may discover that you like things like this. I like it. It's my new favorite. I use it a lot. And so you may be thinking, okay, what kind of, there's intro and outro music inside of podcasts, and I'm sure you all know this, but I get that question a lot. We're like, well, can I use a music track, from whoever, Beyonce or somebody? And it's like, not unless you want to get sued. No, don't even think about that. So where do you get music for intro and outro? Well, if you're in GarageBand, they have jingles that you can use for free. You can make that your intro and outro. But a lot of folks go to places like Free Music Archive, Creative Commons, even Blog Talk Radio, which is a call-in. If you want to just do call-in shows and you want to have people dial in and ask you questions, you can do that. And I did a show for 5 years on Blog Talk Radio called Tech in 20. But they have a link that says 17 places to find PodSafe music. So I put that on there so that's another resource, and some of this is on there. But make sure that you're good. You can also buy your music. I use Pond5, POND5.com. But there's a ton of other sources out there. They're not expensive. They're anywhere from $10, $15 to several $100s. But narrow your price range. You go, I only want to look at music that's this price range and this thing, and go and find it. If you do use one of these PodSafe music sources, typically you have to give attribution. So if you hear a podcast where they say music by whoever that music is, it's because they probably got it from a PodSafe site, and they have to give attribution to that site. So nothing wrong with it. You may think, oh, I don't want to do that. Podcasts that have been around for a really long time that are very, very popular, do that. So don't let that stop you. If you find a song that you like, just give credit to the person at the end of the show, and you're good. Hosting options, WordPress, Blog Talk Radio, Podbean, Libsyn, Blueberry, Anchor, Spreaker, any number of places. They're all out there. This is not a comprehensive list, it's just a list of some. I personally use Blueberry, and only because I met Todd Cochran back in 2006, and at the time, podcasting was brand new and there was a lot of venture capital money being thrown out there. And it was kind of like everybody was kumbaya-ing it and rolling in the dough. Not me, I was just like a geek girl there. But you could see a lot of that happening, and Todd Cochran was the only one going, this isn't a business, venture capital is not a business model, this isn't gonna last. He was the only one there, and people were just like, yeah, Todd. Well, guess what happened? A lot of those companies folded and but guess what still is around? Blueberry. So I always feel like Todd just kind of shoots you straight on the industry as a whole, and he actually has a couple of podcasts about podcasting, and if you really want to know what's happening in the industry, that's a good one to listen to. And then this was, at the time it was iTunes Connect, now it's Apple Connect, but it's very similar. So I didn't re-snapshot those, but you would enter in your Apple ID, enter in your password, and then you would submit your RSS feed, and then you submit it in order to get your podcast into Apple Podcasts. Google Play, not that dissimilar. You would create one. Oh no, here it is. Why did I put Google Play there? Here it is, Google Play, sorry. Google Play, so you would enter in your RSS feed, and you could have it in Google Play. Very simple. Again, it's all, RSS feed is really all you need to get that going. You will have to have one audio file before you submit it. So what I typically tell folks is you can have a show 0, or you can have a little promo on your show about here's what's going to be coming up. The so-and-so podcast is going to be about this. So do a show 0 where you talk about what it's going to be, or actually do an official promo on your 1 to 2 minutes, 1 to 3 minutes, something simple. But when you submit to these places, they're going to go check your RSS feed to see if there's a valid audio file there before they'll accept you in there. So if you submitted it without anything, they'd go, there's nothing there for us to have on our site. So just have a show 0 or a promo. And then home studio. Home studio, like I said, is where you go all in and you go crazy and you're deciding to put things on your wall. And if you do want to go that route, or even if you're going mobile, one of the things I do at the robotics organization is that I record podcast interviews, because we're traveling all around the state, and I interview student participants, I interview their parents, coaches, mentors, volunteers, sponsors, everyone. But we're in from city to city. I don't have control of the space that I'm in. So I take the moving blankets that you get on Amazon, 4 for $40. and I pin them, I tack them to the wall to try and buffer. I'd ask for the smallest room possible. I try and buffer that. This past year, I went ahead and bought an 8x8 flat top tent, like a tent that you would put outside to sell wares. But it's not big, it's an 8x8, and it's got a flat top because I thought if I had a pointy top, some of the rooms that we're in are not tall like this. So I got a flat top one, and then I put got clips, the little, not chip clips, but like those really heavy clips. And I clipped the moving blankets to the inside of that and did my podcast interviews in there. Amazing. It's not soundproof, but it's sound buffered. And you can tell the difference, because we would do a test where we would be in the room and we would just record on our phone, you know, we're here at so-and-so, and then we'd go into that and record, and it definitely sounds warmer. So there's inexpensive ways that you can create your studio. Do you have comforters that you're no longer using? You have, sleeping bags. I mean, if you're like, I don't have 40 bucks, it's okay, you don't need 40 bucks, use what you have around the house, and you can do that. The very best place that you can record in, though, is if you're just doing a recording by yourself, is your walk-in closet, because it is your natural sound booth. And these are things I know you know already. But the walk-in closet is like the best place. And what I do when I do online, if we're going to interview someone and they're going to be doing it at their office or their home, we do a test before. And I'll be like, when we record this interview, where are you going to be? And they're like, oh, I'm going to be in my living room. Okay, I'm going to be in my office. Okay, do you have a walk-in closet? And they're like, yeah. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your phone, and I want you to record one sentence in the living room, and then I want you to go into your bedroom, record it, and then I want you to go into your walk-in closet and record it. And then I want you to listen to all three of those, and you tell me which one sounds the best. Because people think it's weird to go record in a walk-in closet. Though. That's kind of where I'm like, I'm not watching you. It doesn't matter. But the sound is vastly improved. So your natural sound booth where you don't have to buy Amazon blankets is your walk-in closet. So if it's just you, record in there. Do you want to bring your guests in there? No. But, or maybe you do. Maybe it's a show about closets, in which case you should do that. Level 4, podcast production team. Meaning somebody is the techie. They're going to submit your show to iTunes, to Apple Podcasts and to Google Play and to Spotify and to everybody else and their brother that's out there. And they're going to have the mics, they're going to have the software, they have the know-how. You're the talent, you've got the story to tell, you're passionate about what you want to share with the world, and you want to physically show up with your script or with your notes and sit down with equipment you didn't have to buy, with know-how you didn't have to take the time to do, and you just want to go in there and you want to have them record it, and then when you're done, you want to go, great show, and you want to walk out, and in like a week or two, they're going to send you a final file for you to listen to and ask and do any edits or to say approved, and then they will put it onto your website, and it will automatically go to where it needs to go to so that your listeners can get your show. This option is something that I recommend a lot nowadays because I'm trying to not overwhelm you with the techie and the geeky side of this stuff. It's techie, it's geeky, it can be overwhelming. But if you can just go and sit down with a podcast producer and get it done, great. I know that there's places here in Austin that do that. There's places in San Antonio, but then there are people who live in rural areas or in cities where they don't have that. You don't need that. You can actually have online producers. When I was working with an agency in San Antonio, they had a client who was in New York who interviewed people all over the place. The host of the show was like I think in Pennsylvania or Connecticut, and then the client was in New York City, and then the guests were like in LA and Seattle and different parts of the country. And so I was the podcast producer online in San Antonio, and everybody was connecting in. And then I was doing the recording, testing, can we hear you, can hear it, yes, yes, okay, go. And I was just sitting there, capturing everything, making sure all the levels were good while they did the show. When it was over, I had the audio, they all went their merry way, and my team did the post-production. So it doesn't have to be someone physical, it can be online. The tools have really gotten really great. IPDTL, fantastic tool. Squadcast.fm, great tool. There's a lot of those kinds of things where you can do it yourself or have someone someone else, but take a look at those. Squadcast is like $20 a month, $19.99, and it has video where you can see your co-host or your guest that you're interviewing, but it doesn't record that. It only records the audio, records it on separate tracks, very warm sounding, all online, really fantastic. And then for the IPDTL, it depends on the packages, but because I was doing multiple guests, I needed the gold package, so that was like $85 a month, so that's kind of pricey. But then they had like, you need a day pass, it's like $15. You know, so there's all kinds of ways to do these things. But for most folks nowadays who really want to get into this but don't have the time, team, and tools, because that's really what it comes down to, right? How much time do you really have to dedicate to this? Who's the team? Is it a team of 1? Is it a team of 2 to 3? Who are those folks? What are their responsibilities? And then what are the tools you're going to use? Are you going to buy just your phone? Are you going to buy some of this stuff? Are you going to go all in and do a home studio? What are you going to do? So time, team, and tools. And a lot of times folks are like, I'm already busy as it is, Jennifer. I know we want to do this, and we know that it's important for us to kind of get it out there, but we don't have all of those things, nor do we want to. The agency hired my company because even though their clients wanted podcasts, the agency didn't have anybody internal to do it, nor did they care to bring anybody internal to do it. So they hired my company as a subcontractor to come in and do those things. So we were, in essence, level 4 for them. So you're like, oh, Jennifer, that sounds really expensive. I know in San Antonio we have Game Day Media. So Game Day Media, I think .net. They have a studio, they have like 2 studios in San Antonio. And I want to say that you can do a package of 4 hours for like maybe $200. And they do everything, everything. You just show up, record, and walk out. Not bad for not having no 3 a.m. editing sessions or not having to buy equipment because they have top-of-the-line stuff. I'm sure the similar can be found here, but they also have clients that they work with online. I work more with agency types, but of course with my nonprofit. And let me pause here because how much time do we have?
We're okay. It's 7:43, but we didn't start. It's about an hour, but we have the room till 8.
Okay, so we're gonna burn
15
through
minutes.
this.
We're
Faster's
okay.
not better, but getting started is better than not. It's not a race. Be consistent. Slow and steady actually does win the race. This is long tail, folks. You're not going to release 5 shows and get where you want to go. It's long tail. So just do it as a long tail thing, and you'll be better and happier at it. Create for a listener of 1, but build a rabid, and you can build a rabid fan base. And so what should you podcast about? Tell your story, tell your product, your service, your cause, your experience. Share useful information, podcast to your future clients. I mean, it could be anything. Again, you can have themes. You know, if there's natural cycles in your nonprofit or in your business, and so go with those natural cycles. Bring guests in. I mean, the quickest way to grow your podcast is to have guests, because guess what? What are they going to do? Are they going to tell no one that they were on your show? They're going to tell people they were on your show. And so hopefully those folks, number 1, they'll come listen to at least that person that they know, but maybe they're going to like your style and what you have to say, and they might want to subscribe and listen to more and learn more. I buy a lot of products off of podcasts, lots, because the host talks about their personal experience. Now, I don't have a Casper mattress because that's too weird, and nor do I have like the fresh, whatever, meal prep. But there was a podcast I was listening to, and he said, hey, I've got these new things called RX bars. I've been buying them for a while, but now we're actually sponsored by them. And he told his story about how he discovered them and why he was eating them. And I was like, I want to go try those. And they were really good. And so now our family buys RX bars, but it's because of the podcast. I buy podcaster gear. A podcaster gear says we have merchandise, and I'm like, I like that show. I will buy a hoodie. I will buy a T-shirt. I will buy a sticker. You know. So I'm someone who will buy from you if you're talking about things that you have. I also support shows. They're like, we've got an account on Patreon, and we have these different subscription levels. Sure, I am entertained by your show. I'm happy to contribute. We're doing a fundraising thing once a year. Okay, great. Your audience can be, because we know you. We believe in you. We like what you're doing. So give us an opportunity to help support you in ways that aren't like, physically painful or financially painful, but we're part of your community. That's really, it's a great way to go forward. So let me think. I want to wrap this up. So hard launch, soft launch. A lot of folks are like, well, it has to be perfect before I launch. And so I think of those things as kind of like a hard launch where you're like very ding, 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 ding. But sometimes you just want a soft launch. I will tell you that one of the agency in San Antonio hired me to work initially for one of their private clients who wanted to create a podcast but strictly internal. They never wanted it to go to iTunes. It never did. They never wanted it to be external. It was strictly for their internal, for their employees and for the people that they served. Just for them. And it was never even on their main website. It was on a secondary site, which was about their community, that, for their members and their community. So it wasn't even ever going to be on their main site. They very much wanted it to be public. So it was a concept. The main people didn't really believe in it. They were like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but there were some champions inside who were like, we really think this can work. So they took their top 6 popular blogs and they turned those into the first few podcasts. And the numbers blew everybody's mind. Everyone was surprised at how much people wanted to listen to those. Number one, they were popular topics, so that was smart. But number two, people were hungry for podcasts. And so we looked at the numbers, and all of a sudden it went from, here's a little beta test on inside of this company on whether this might work, to brass going, oh, we need more. And so I think we did like 2 years of that. 30-something shows, all on a soft launch, maybe this might work, kind of like a pilot program. And all of a sudden it was this big thing. So you may find people who maybe within your organization are like, you know, just pitch it as a pilot program, or pitch it as a one-off, a one series around this one thing that's really important to the nonprofit or to your company. And then you'll probably get some buy-in from brass and maybe some budget for it. And then see how the success goes from there. And then it may grow into something longer, but sometimes you have to prove the concept. So a soft launch is definitely something I've seen work very well. And then I don't know how many of you know Gary Vee, but Gary Vee said this back in a few years back, but he was talking about how it's that podcasting and audio and voice is the most natural way for us to interact. And how many of you all have one of those Alexas or Home Pods? Or okay, you're my people, because I don't have one either. But yeah, right, the NSA is listening to us, right? But they are very, very popular. And the Alexa briefings are gaining a lot of traction. So what's happening is a lot of podcasters are creating Alexa briefing versions of their podcasts, which are small little nuggets, and submitting it to Alexa because there's not a lot of content on there yet. So can you stand out now in a great way? And Alexa's not going anywhere. They're getting more and more and more saturation. So is it a good thing to think about that? Yeah, it is. And he was talking, he's like, develop an Alexa skill or start experimenting with Google Home. Audio is going to be the next major platform shift for consumer attention. Because once again, why? Because we're all busy and there's only so many books we can read. There's only, we can't read a book while we're, driving. We want it, so we listen to audiobooks. That was the answer, right? We want to read a book, but we can't because we're driving, we're doing other things, so we listen to an audiobook. This is another way to do that, to kind of that thinking. So any questions?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, wow. Exciting. So, can you talk a little bit more about hosting options?
Mm-hmm.
I heard, this might be a myth, that some of the places, the bigger places, I guess the Apples, you need to demonstrate that you already have an audience and things like that?
You don't have to demonstrate that you have an audience, you have to demonstrate that you have audio. Because it's not a person, it's automated. Now, if it flags for some reason, because typically they say it can take anywhere from up to 10 days to get approved through Google and through Apple. I will tell you on average it's between 1 to 3 days, on average. Now, it doesn't mean they can't take 10 days, but on average it's about that. And all it is, it's an automated system. Now, if something kicks back and it rejects it, saying no, it's not a good feed, or there wasn't an audio there, then that's where a human can interact. But they're really just looking to make sure you have audio. It isn't about the quality. Now, I will say that Spotify and Pandora, those are about larger audiences, and especially Pandora, about larger audiences and quality audiences. If you want to get sponsorship, typically you need a minimum of 25,000 listeners per show. And that's, downloads and all the different platforms. So you're looking at having a larger audience in order to get sponsorship, corporate sponsors. But I will tell you that, what's her name? Jean Krasinski. The lady who does Her Money. I don't know if you know her. She does Her Money. I saw her 2 years ago at Podcast Movement, and she was talking about, she's a broadcaster, radio broadcaster on the East Coast. And she said that there was a financial advisor company that wanted to advertise on her radio show. She's like, I don't know. It needed to be host-read. And she's like, I don't know anything about finances, and it doesn't feel right for me to be pitching this company when I myself don't know anything, and my listeners are going to think I'm vouching for this company. So she came up with the idea to counter-pitch this advertising agency that she said, I would like to learn about money though, and I'm a woman who's an older woman, and I think that I am not alone in not knowing about money. And so she counter-pitched the potential advertiser to create a podcast called Her Money, where that advertiser, the owner of that company, was the co-host with her. fully sponsored. So sometimes you're thinking, if I get my show good enough, then I might get a sponsor. Why don't you build it with the sponsor in mind? Have them be part of the show, and so they fund it, your message gets out there, their message gets out there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Things that you think, oh, I gotta do this, somebody's coming up with a creative way to do it differently, and you can too. You can also do something that's just simple. I did this thing called, back in 2007, I started National Podcast Post Month. How many of you have heard about NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writers Month? In November 1 through November 30th, National Novel Writers Month, the goal is to write a 50,000 word novel in 30 days. So I heard about this back in 2007, and then when I heard about that, I was like, wow, that's amazing. I heard that the vloggers, the video, as they were called back then, the video bloggers, they were called vloggers, had NaVloPomo do a video every day for 30 days in the month of November, and I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then I found out that the bloggers had something called NaBloPomo, National Blog Post Month, and I was like, holy cow. So I thought, this is cool, I'm gonna go join the one for podcasting. There wasn't one, it didn't exist. And I was like, what? The vloggers have one, the video people have one, and we don't have one? So I thought, I'm gonna make it. So I created NaPodPomo in 2007. This year we're going to have, it'll be a 12-year anniversary, and in that first year we had like 50 people join. I created it 3 days before November 1. I didn't plan it. Mostly everything I've done has been that way. I didn't plan it very well. I was just like, I'm going to do it, and then I just threw it out onto social and said, here's what I'm doing, and by the time it was done, 50 people, I was like super impressed, because who the heck's going to podcast every day in the month of November? There's Thanksgiving, for goodness sake, right? In the U.S. So it's international. People in the UK and Australia and Israel and other places who do it now. So they're saying, shouldn't you change it to international? I'm like, no. NaNoWriMo is still NaNoWriMo, even though it's global. I'm not changing it. But the community that developed around that has been phenomenal, because people who either are existing podcasters and wanted to try something new, like I try something new every time. This is my opportunity to experiment, because it's fail fast, get good. During 30 days, the podcast you record on November 1 is going to be vastly different than the one you record on November 30th. You will have improved in a fast amount of time. I call it fail fast, get good. Boot camp, podcasting boot camp. That you can do it really quickly in a community environment where everyone else is going through what you're going through, and so you will get better just by going through the process. And having the community to support you is also it's really cool.
You have a Twitter chat.
I do. I started.
I listened to it last weekend. Was
Sunday.
it?
So every Sunday at 7 p.m. I started this June 2nd because I was thinking,
it's good.
Why isn't there a podcast chat? I participate on Twitter chats all the time.
What's the handle?
It's a
Or the hashtag?
podcast chat. All together hashtag.
Isn't that funny that?
Yeah. There wasn't one, and so there used to be one, from what I understood, years ago, and I tried to find who it was, and I couldn't find them, so I was like, because you want to be collaborative, you don't want to just show up and go, I made this. NaPodPomo, yes, I did make, but not this, and so I was looking for them. They showed up, I think, on the second week, like, oh, we love that somebody brought this back, it's amazing. We did it for a few years, and we couldn't do it anymore, but we were sad that nobody wanted to pick it up. We're thrilled that you picked it up. I go, oh, I was looking for you. So it's a very collaborative area, but we do different topics for an hour. This Sunday at 7 p.m. it's about PodSafe music. Where do you find it?
Oh, good.
Where did you find yours?
Well, this
Where did you pay for it?
past Sunday was like the length of the program.
Yeah, it was about the micro, the nugget, the commuter, and the
so
long
everybody was weighing in. It was
yeah.
really helpful to see what everybody was doing
That's
at
my
the different lengths.
That's
of
my second
podcasting.
question. I asked somebody who podcasts, I said, well, I'd like to do just a 6-minute,
Do it.
and he was like, that sounds more like a YouTube video. I was like, okay.
Anybody who wants to poo-poo you or naysay you,
But if listeners are not, and this is where, like, I was in the reference to me being in radio, I was in radio from like the mid-80s, or the late 80s to the mid
before it all became one company.
2000s, well, in public radio, so.
Oh, since
Yeah, so, so we always think about, like, where are people going to be listening? What are they doing? Because it's so time-bound and everything.
Yeah, but now, like, I've listened to that outdoor podcast and then burn through their 3-year catalog. You don't know when someone's going to listen. And probably they were like, to this day, that show Tech in 20 that we did from 2008 through whatever 5 years is after that, 2013, I guess? No, 12? No. I don't know, 5 years. I'm not a math person. Anyway, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, yeah, 2000, I was right. Good God. Okay, 2013, we still get people who go and listen to that. That was a long time ago. It was on technology, so it was a current events kind of a thing. Now, we did have, we had good guests. We had really good guests. Every Tuesday we did the topic, and every Thursday we had a guest. So we have, guests who are well known. But I'm surprised to see that the numbers are still there, that people still go and listen. So you never know when someone's going to listen and discover and burn through what you've got. And I actually had somebody walk up. I was at the Balcones Heights Jazz Festival in San Antonio the opening weekend, and they had like a little VIP mixer thing. And someone said, oh, I need to introduce you to someone. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And they introduced me to this guy, and he's like, I know you. I'm like, okay. I mean, I speak, I don't know. I do video. And he's like, I go, well, have you seen me speak, or did you come to one of my meetings? And he's like, no, I used to watch you on video. And I'm like, oh, Tech in 20. He's like, yes. He goes, I learned about social media and about tech and about something else. Can't remember what else he said, 2 things, because of watching your show. And I go, yeah, it started out as audio, and then our audience wanted us to do video, so we did audio and video, but then we just, at the 5-year mark, we both got busy, and we just decided not to do it anymore. It wasn't because the audience didn't want us to do it, it was because we just got busy. So you'd be surprised that even after all this time, somebody still remembers what you did and gives you that kind of information. So your 6-minute, I would consider that, a nugget. You're doing a nugget of a show, and don't let anybody tell you what you can or can't do or should and shouldn't do. Make it yours. Go look for other nugget shows and see how they're doing it. And that's what I always tell. So when I bring on a client, I have this mind map. It's a podcasting onboarding mind map. And we talk about time, team, and tools, and we talk about, the length of the show. We talk about, are they going to go live? Are they going to be solo? Are they going to have co-hosts? Are they going to have guests? All of those things. We work through what's their timeline, all these things. But one of the things that we talk about is you have to go and listen to shows in your industry or in your category. And I tell them, when you listen to them, you're going to get intimidated. I'm going to tell you right now, don't get intimidated. What I want you to listen to them is, what are the things, with a notepad, what do you like? What do you don't like? You're like, oh, I really like how they do their intro. Okay, great. What is it? How did they do it? Did they have this cool music, or did they do a snippet? Some of the things is they do a snippet from the interview, and they put it in the front to kind of tease you, and then they give you the intro, and then the show starts, right? Is that okay? Is that how we want to do you? Or do you just like the little music coming in, and then the little voice of God, the narrator going, you're listening to the whatever show, and with the host, whoever, and then it's like, then the host comes on. Or do you like it where the host just jumps on and goes, hey everybody, we're here, and just dives, no music. I need for you to discover what you like so that we can develop your podcast. So go and listen to those nugget shows, and even if they're, in your case, it may not necessarily be in your industry, but get a sense of the pacing, the timing, the flow, and sit down as you listen with the notepad. Oh, I hate the way they did that. Okay, great, we're not going to do that. But do that, because that'll help inform and build your show and make it easier for you to get. Because right now, the 6 minutes seems like, what's out there? What should it be? And now you'll know what's out there, and then you can be informed on how you want to develop yours.
I think it'd be great to have a nonprofit fundraising.
Yes,
Podcast.
that's actually my social good 6 is what I wanted to call it.
Do
and
it.
have like 2 or 3 segments where it was like, one segment be uplifting, not a quote or something inspiring, so that nonprofits can listen to, nonprofit professionals can listen to it like Monday morning when they're like, oh, I'm so tired, and I'm doing this hard job.
This is the Monday motivation?
Yeah, it's like, I have Monday motivation, but they might listen to it other days, but I imagine them
Sure.
as being a radio person. When are they going to listen to it? Like Monday mornings, first thing, and it's like inspiration for like a couple minutes. And I know it would have to be highly produced, like I'd be like splice,
Yeah, the segments, right?
Segments or whatever. See, I used to use the razor blade. That's how.
Whoa,
long
yeah.
ago, that's like splice.
Right.
Anyway, so.
Well, this is like command, depending on the program, Command T or Command.
Okay.
or command.
I'll start.
That's your
doing this
cutting,
hand motion.
right?
Anyway, so uplifting, and then maybe a tip from a professional, and I've recorded a long interview with them, but like taken part 1, part 2, part 3, like over the number of weeks, and then wild card would be the last 2 minutes or whatever, like, oh, here's a joke or something like that, so that's the idea.
I love it. I think you should do it, but go see what's out there to get a sense of that, you know. And then another thing to do though is to poll your audience too, you know. And the reason, one of the things you'll want to do is you want to take people on the journey. So right now, like today, you're like, I just went to this podcasting thing, and I'm thinking about that our nonprofit or our cause is going to do this. So take your audience, your potential audience, on the journey by breadcrumbing them. So this is the first breadcrumb. You're here to learn to see if this is going to be a thing for your cause or your nonprofit or whatever your mission is. And so this is what you got from it. And then you're like, okay, I've been doing some of the research. And here's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think about this? Do a poll. Think about this, 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 and this. You know, I'm listening to music. Here's the 3 tracks that I've listened to. Or, you know, just breadcrumb your audience. So by the time you're like, here's my soft launch or here's my whatever test, we're in. We're bought in. I always think about, if you were going to climb Mount Everest, I could either know for the first time the selfie that you take on Mount Everest and go, wow, I had no idea. They were even training for that. Or you could say, I don't know anything about mountain climbing. I think before I die on my bucket list, I want to climb Mount Everest, so I don't know. Come on the journey with me. And then you follow me as I go, as I learn about it, as I do buy my gear, as I hire guides, as I go on my very first small mountain and learn, and then maybe I hurt my ankle, and I'm like, I'm laid up for 6 weeks. And so it's the highs and the lows of this journey. By the time I'm on Mount Everest 2 to 3 years later, that excitement for me getting there is a completely different experience than if I was just like Mount Everest and I didn't tell anybody about it and didn't take my audience or my listeners on the journey. So I would start to develop your potential audience now as you're building it. And just like what you're talking about, you know, you're like, I bought my domain, you know, here it is, you know, just all those little things that breadcrumb your potential audience there. And then we're cheering you on. We want you to be successful. We're part of that journey with you. And then action steps: decide your level of podcasting, dedicate time, team, and tools. And number 3, the most important, like Carolyn did when she met me, take action.
Just get
Take
on there.
action. Start with your phone. Don't feel the pressure. Make it easy. If you feel like you're big, you know, what do they call that? The BHAGs or whatever. Your big hairy
Yeah.
Audacious goal.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That, okay, if you feel like that, start with something personal then. Something small so that you can learn the tools, learn the techniques, something that's just for you, that has nothing to do with work, and build your chops and then transition to work if that's something that you're worried about. I know fear is what stops us from doing a lot of amazing things. We're put on this planet, we have a mission inside of us, and if you let fear stop you from getting your mission out there, you're not doing the world or yourself any good. So start small if you feel like you need to, because the tools are there for you to do it, and then transition that into the hard launch, or take people on the journey with you and let them, you know, help you get better. And that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So much. That was amazing.
I will say that we have a conference coming up in October, Texas PodCon. It doesn't officially launch until August 1, but we have been in the planning stages, so that's something. And then National Podcast Month, Post Month Year 12, November 1.
Send me put me on the list, and I'll
Sure.
put the information on our Facebook page and our emails and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
for sure, National Podcast Post Month. 30 podcasts, 30 days, you can do it. I can't tell you how many people did it because they were like, I don't think I can do it, and are now podcasting in 2 days. So it's a fail fast, get good. You'll know whether you like podcasting or not real quick. Real quick. Before you buy any gear, you'll know.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Looks like we have lots of feedback with y'all meeting.
To go take with.
And also don't forget little tchotchkes and
Thanks, stuff.
resources.
Fun.
That was so listening to you talk after all those social media breakfasts.
A blast from the past.
Because that was like